Our next reader is Carolyn.
I'm Carolyn Radmanovich, and I wrote The Shapeshifter's Wife, and book number 2 is coming out soon, and number 3 I'm working on. And tonight's reading reminds me of an unorganized potluck I went to years ago, where everybody brought either beans or salad. And we had like 4 or 5 different kinds of beans and 4 or 5 different kinds of salad. So tonight I'm reading a story about a near drowning, like Liz did, and we had some Alzheimer's and different things, very, very similar, interesting. So this story was prompted because I almost drowned on the Russian River. My husband saved me. My husband's sitting in the back with a cowboy hat. Yay. And so because of that event, I wrote this book, and I took certain parts of my life that are real, including this near drowning, but some parts you'll realize didn't happen to me, and I won't tell you till you'll figure it out. The farther I paddled, the quieter the river became. All of a sudden, the river widened, and with the change came the rush of fast-moving water. I realized my limited canoeing abilities might not be enough for deep channels. I hadn't expected this quiet river to turn into a frothing, tumultuous sea of danger. My canoe headed right for the confluence of 2 merging channels, which created a great surge of water. Out of nowhere, I saw a massive dead tree stuck above the waterline. I tried to avoid the bare arms of the tree by paddling with all my might, but I found myself pulled closer by the strong suction. The water funneled downward, and I could see a gushing swirl. My canoe collided with the dead wood, and in an instant it turned over. I held my breath and expected to bob to the surface. Instead, when I dared to open my eyes, the canoe was wedged upside down over my head, held by the branch of the dead tree. I could hear the deafening sound of the water rushing by the submerged tree. I saw millions of white bubbles churning in the water around the canoe. I raised my arms and attempted to move the canoe off my head, but it wouldn't budge. I realized I had no air left in my lungs. In a matter of moments, I would enter the darkness of death. Fear filled my arteries and grabbed at my chest. Knowing death was imminent, I prayed a prayer of thanksgiving to God for my good but short life and asked that my life be saved. I felt the dread of drowning mixed with the unexpected excitement of facing the adventure of an afterlife. My chest burned, my body screamed for air. I felt anxiety, as well as a wonderful expectancy that my spirit would become free from my body and I would go to meet God. I could no longer hold back, and my lungs expanded to take in the rush of water. Instead, my body followed its natural, ancient instinct from the sensation of cold water, and my throat closed off. In a spasm, blackness and silence engulfed me. I dreamed of water nymphs pulling on my arms. One of them grabbed me by the hair and pulled me to her. She kissed me on the lips, blowing something like sweet air into my mouth. I no longer felt the urgency to breathe. The long-legged, naked nymphs grabbed my body and pulled me away from the dead tree, away from the overturned canoe. Their long hair floated sideways, pulled by the current, as they swam around my freed body. Soon I was conscious of a sound like the melody of a siren, or the song of nymphs and their river. The constant noise of the moving water mesmerized me. Air bubbles went by my eyes and tickled my nose. The nymph's hair wrapped around my head and face as a river's force pushed and pulled the water's current. My body felt numb from the coldness of my watery tomb. One of the water nymphs pushed a crystal into my forehead, which felt hot as it pierced my skin. The other nymphs swam in a circle around me as they held onto each other's long hair. Their naked breasts were buoyant in the water, and their nipples hard and pink. Their hands reached out to me as they rocked me back and forth. My unconscious body bobbed up to the surface, my feet dragging behind. Then I felt the gravel beneath my feet. I straightened my legs and opened my eyes as a stranger's 2 strong arms steadied me in the shoulder-deep water. When I attempted to breathe, I gagged and wasn't able to take air into my lungs because my vocal cords were still in spasm. My savior was a tall, good-looking man with a concerned look on his face. He coached me. Take it slow and easy. Relax. Think of some nice warm tea going down your throat and a cozy fire in front of you. Now, open your throat and let the air in. He reached over and while massaging my shoulders and smoothing my hair, he whispered, Angelica, Angelica, you've come to me, my darling, my petite. As I looked at him in wonder, I tried again, attempting to get air into my closed throat. 3 more tries and my throat opened, and a wonderful rush of air filled my lungs. I was so thrilled with being able to breathe, I didn't mind being called a new name. I threw my arms in the air and started yelling, I'm alive, I'm alive. I never felt so happy. I grabbed that strange, handsome man and hugged him, while the two of us stood together in the deep rushing water. I could feel the strength in his enthusiastic hug as I yelled, thank you, thank you. I'm so happy you're alive, ma chérie. Let us get you out of the river. My rescuer guided my hands to the sandy wall on the side of the river. Hold on to the cliff while I try to find a way up. While standing in the turbulent water, I became aware that my halter had been torn away, and all I had on were my shorts. My long, wet hair hung down in my eyes. As a man started climbing the hillside, I could see he was bare-chested and only wore leather pants. A red hawk feather hung from the dark brown ponytail. He climbed about 4 feet up the sandy hillside when it gave way, and he tumbled back into the river. A quiet low grumble came from his throat. I was in shock with my brush from death, and I clutched onto the side of the cliff. With the water up to my shoulders, the river whirled and eddied as it went by. I became hypnotized by the motion, like a magnet, pulling me back into the maelstrom. I came out of my trance when I heard the man call, hang on, my angel. Again he climbed, hand over hand. He attempted to get one of his knees wedged into the loose hillside. When he started to place his other foot, the sandy soil wouldn't hold him, and he fell again. I became frightened, thinking I would never get out of the water. He called out, Angelica, don't worry, I'll find a way up. Feeling heartened by his confidence, I heard his voice, and I became distracted, looking at the man's bare, tan, muscular back. His broad shoulders tapered down to his long, slender waist. His biceps bulged as his muscles strained until he found a rock embedded in the cliff and was able to pull himself up. As he extended his hand to me, I felt his firm grasp. At the top of the cliff, he lifted me with ease and set me on some lush grass. With my arms crossed over my bare chest, I lay at my side, feeling exhausted yet exhilarated at being alive. I couldn't help but wonder, who is this man who just saved me?